Hello, welcome to our Codurance Fireside Chat. This is, if you're new to this channel, so Codurance is a software consultancy company, and this is our Fireside Chats where we like to discuss all things about software craftsmanship, agile, software development in general, everything that we do on a daily basis. And this is the time that myself, as one of the co-founders, I have Mesh, that is another co-founder, and Jose, that is the managing director for Codurance Spain. So we used to get together anyway, like in the past after working hours, to discuss about our days, the things that we were doing. And at some point we decided to, well, why not we start recording those chats? Because like we end up learning with each other, sharing a lot of information. And then we said, well, let's do that. So this is how the Fireside Chats emerged. So every week we try to record every Tuesday. We are doing live now. So every week we pick a different topic. We don't structure them too much. We normally have a title for the episode, but I don't know exactly what Mesh or Jose will be talking. They don't know what I'm going to be talking. And this is the way that for us to have a more spontaneous chat. So if you are expecting something very well structured, very well reasoned ideas, you're not going to find it right now. But hopefully you're going to have some ideas.
Well, hopefully there will be reasons, somewhat. I don't know about the structure,
structured. Yeah, exactly. So, but that's
I don't know about you guys. Mine are well structured and well reasoned. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
We're in the wrong chat, mate. Where we are, right? So, okay. So today, like, what we decided to take is like we decided to discuss about the dichotomy, or even a false dichotomy, between technical stories and business stories. Like from our experience running multiple projects and speaking to many development teams, it's quite common for us to see people talking about, oh, this is a business story or this is a technical story. And the way that they manage that, sometimes they manage really well, sometimes they don't. They have separate backlogs and different people look after different things. So this is what this conversation is about. And I believe that a way to get started would be, how do we even define? Well, first of all, is it something that you guys you've come across before? And how do you define that difference between, like, what is a technical story? What is a technical story? Have you seen that before? Or what are your thoughts?
You want to go first?
I can start.
You're the definitions guy.
No, I'm not going to provide a definition, but I actually, in any other construction effort, you don't really see this. But I mean, if you treat software as a construction effort, it can be research effort or everything else. But we do have this tendency to say, well, build the next feature in the most straightforward way possible and the quickest way possible. And what that usually means is that you forget about all the things that allow your system to be sustainable, and you just go ahead in the very, I guess, direct sense of the word, build that feature and get it out of the door as quick as you can, not worrying about any structural compromises that you may have made in the code base, right? So normally what they do is we would create this division between the work that is purely to do with building that next feature that provides, I don't know, business value or that is visible to the business, and the other stuff that is necessary but not necessarily visible to the business. So we call this technical work and business related work, right? And often what happens is that the pressure from the business is so much that when we keep prioritizing this direct technical work, business work, and not really paying too much attention to the technical work. So we are building one feature after the next without worrying about the structural integrity of the software and the systems that we are producing. And I think that's where we make this division. And I guess that's the definition of a business task and a technical task.
Jose, how do you see them?
I haven't found this. man. Like I always, I always see just one backlog, and everyone, when adding a new feature, they always add everything that they need in order for that feature to take care of the structural integrity as well as deliver, value that is visible for the users. That has never happened to me.
So which parallel
No,
universe are you from
seriously.
then?
Exactly. Like, is it
I want
like
to work where
this?
you work. No,
Is it the solar system? Like, is it a
exactly.
different solar system? Like,
No, no. Of course, I've seen this, and in fact, I've seen people like you mentioned before manage these different ways, either separate backlogs or the same backlog with different types of user stories, no, or tasks. Or I've also seen it as we need to add the new feature, and whatever we need to do in order to add the new feature, we will do. We're not gonna take shortcuts on that, no. And in general, I think it's very much related to how people tend to think about technical debt, and it also for me has a relationship with how there's both a perception that technical work is not part of the business work, no, and vice versa, like the business is not also technical, right? And I think this is a communication problem as well, that goes beyond how you define it, or whether you're using backlogs or not, no. So for me, it's yes, I've seen it. It's very common, and it's usually a smell, no, of a couple of things, of that communication issue that we talked about, of um, maturity to some extent on the technical team to understand what needs to get done properly, or what are the trade-offs that they need to do or not, no. And the ownership for that, no, the whole if I'm a surgeon, no, to quote someone we no, if I'm a surgeon, no, should I wash my hands? Of course I need to wash my hands, no, if I'm gonna operate on someone, no? That kind of thing, no. So yeah, I don't know.
yeah. So I've seen this distinction multiple times, and this distinction, first, I find that they are very unnatural. I understand why they happen. I understand the causes of it. I just find it unnatural. It just took me like many years to understand that. But the first is, it's a source of a lot of how can I say, uh, frustration, right? Both from the people that are trying to idealize or conceptualize those business features, and also for the people that are conceptualizing or idealizing the technical features. There is a lot of frustration in there. One of the causes of it, in my view, is that there is one type of people. They have a perspective of what needs to be done, and they prioritize. They create tasks, or I'll call it, well, I'll be use tasks and stories interchangeably, but they create tasks on a backlog according to the perspective that they judge to provide more value to the business. And there are different types of people that they have a different perspective of value, of what needs to be done. They see different types of inefficiencies, or even like improvements, and they see value in those things, and that's why they will end up pushing for certain tasks. And because those different there are different groups, they might even speak a different language. So the people that have more of a business leaning, they will be thinking, or a product leaning, they will be, for them, business value is everything that is associated to potential users of that product, or any improvements for the business according to the area that they might be. When someone is more technical, they end up seeing different types of inefficiencies, or different types of improvements and gains that the company could have from a technical perspective. And for them, that is quite valuable, and they would like to work on those tasks or propose those tasks. And that creates a friction, because they are coming from different perspectives. But of course, that not everyone has the same power to unify all those different tasks or proposals and prioritize them. That is, normally there will be a set of people that you have the responsibility, let's say, to prioritize those backlogs. And some people end up either there is one person that or a group of people that will prioritize a backlog, and they will prioritize according to their view of value. And the other ones, sometimes, like either their task will be at the bottom in a single backlog, or they would do, they will create a separate backlog. But that is normally how we get to the situation. For me, it's like different people with different perspectives of value trying to push different tasks, and we end up with that potential false dichotomy in the creation of those.
Or as some Jose likes to call it, the healthy tension.
If you want to laugh about this joke, you need to watch the last episode.
Exactly. It's a very healthy tension, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it's so what kind of problems have you seen this create? Like, why is this not let's say a good idea to make this distinction of value, or at least to manage it in a way in which they're not part of the same thing? No, because to some extent what we're saying here is depends on what perspective you're taking. No, it's the value that you're seeing, and then you tend to make that distinction between the two. And no, but why is that not a great thing in your opinion?
Can we just, before we talking about it being a great thing, I think there is a problem with the perspective as well. Why are they taking different perspectives, right? Because I mean, if we look at why do those two perspectives exist, and I have a theory behind it, and I call this stories defined at a level where they are no longer just stories, they are architectural decisions, right? So often what happens, technical decisions. So often stories are defined at a particular level, or tasks, or whatever you call them, that they are actually talking about and prioritizing certain aspects of the system more than other aspects of the system. And maybe it's related
So
to
what do you mean? Like I'm sorry, I'm failing to understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I, the way, yeah. So the way I would look at this is that, you know, at the most, I will describe a kind of a much more granular level first, right? Sometimes a system is quite complex, and the stories are refined, the epics are refined to stories, and those stories are at the level where they're saying, do this thing in this system, do this thing in this system, and do that thing. And it's the product owners or whoever is defining those stories is deciding what goes into what part of the system, right? So they,
I mean,
and
it's not a full slice of value
value.
increment. No, it's more like pointers to what work needs to be done in which parts of the system. Is that
Yeah,
what you're?
and this can be even be disguised as a business story, but it's too fine grained and it has knowledge of the system, right? It has technical knowledge implied, so they can, like, you know, a typical example in this case would be, you know, build that button, build that API, and so on. That's at one level, and those are easy to spot that they're not really good stories and good features. But even defining to the point is, you know, the user is allowed to add this item to the basket, yeah, or they can even at that level, even though you're describing at a business level, they still have some implicit knowledge around the system. They're not describing value on the delivery of that value, they're describing features at a more technical level, not at the what the point I'm trying to make badly is that the level at which stories are defined can lead to this dichotomy. and and you would be surprised how high you think that you may, at a high level, you may have defined that story, and it still could lead to that dichotomy. And my personal view is that you've already gone too lower level if that is, if those stories are defined from one perspective, right? So that's where the perspective comes in. I think at some point your perspectives change, or you divide these perspectives because you've gone too low level in describing value. So does that make sense?
It does to me, although there is certainly something in there that is, in the way I see it, is there is how you are trying to portray value, but not necessarily in the granularity. Because, for example, you can propose, let's say, like you are part of the team and you want to propose something for the team to focus on. Yeah. And you can propose that at multiple levels, even if you just purely thinking about a product or business kind of features. You have features at multiple levels, because you might create one that is like at a roadmap level, right? So, for example, for the next quarter or the next 2 quarters, this is the stream of work that you're going to be working on, and that is quite a high level thing. It's not an item that is ready to work on, but there is. If you think about a product backlog from a portfolio view or strategy view, you have like items at that level. Then, of course, you end up breaking them down into potentially epics and so on and so forth to achieve that. And those epics are written in a way, they have a granularity, and they are written in a way where they themselves, they provide value at that level of granularity. And then, but in order to actually be something workable by a team in a short iteration, a short period of time, you end up breaking them down into stories and so on and so forth, and then later on tasks even. So I believe that it's still the same it's still valid for technical stories. You can still have technical stories at all those levels, right? For me, so the granularity, I don't have an issue with the granularity itself. I have an issue is how value is expressed. And that, then I agree with you sometimes, like when you say like, I want just to have this button here or change, but we are failing to capture why do you want to do that? What are you expecting to be better? What is the benefit that either the company or, well, someone will have after this thing is done? And I think this is where the real problem is expressing that value, but not necessarily the granularity, because the granularity you can still break them down.
Yeah, it's almost what I'm actually. You're right. It's not about granularity. It's about the implicit knowledge you have of the solution. So I'll give you an example, just a rudimentary example I was thinking of. Like let's say you have a building and your product owner comes to you and says, I want another room added to this building on the 7th floor adjacent to room 12. Room 12 happens to be on the outside of the building. Yeah. So you want a room, but you want it adjacent to room 12. And then the person designing says, oh, but that's on the outside of the building. I'm going to have to build a whole structure in order to support this room. And they say, but you don't, I don't care. You need to build it quickly as you built the other rooms. So, well, what I can then do is maybe add like another small structure next to it. It'll be a bit flimsy, not as good as the other rooms, but I'll build that room. But or you can say to the engineer, in a builder in this case, I want an extra room. I want to accommodate one more person in this building. I want to accommodate one. So then the engineer decides how to do that. They might come back to you and they say, well, okay, this is not too bad because I can just add another divider in an existing room and turn it in two. Or actually, there is no more room there, so I'm going to have to build this extra column on the side. That's going to take a long time. But they come back and they don't say, they don't talk about the complexity of the solution. They say, given the current solution, this is how long it's going to take to give you the next requirement. And the person asking for that doesn't go deeper into why it's taking so long. They trust the person to know that they're creating a sustainable thing, a safe building, And as part of adding this thing, they might, last time they came up with 1 day, and next time they might come up with 12 months. And it's still, they trust it. So it's not about the granularity of what you're asking. It's that implicit knowledge about the solution that you're imposing on the builder as well. And I think
Yeah.
this is a problem.
But there is something with the granularity. By the way, I agree. But there is something with the granularity, especially when you're trying to time box the things to fit into a sprint, an iteration, whatever. You have 2 weeks, and you need to deliver something that is adds value, and then you tend to, in some cases, maybe artificially cut things, no, to make it fit, no, into the iteration, whatever, and that could be a problem, right? Like when that granularity, no, is forced by a time constraint or whatever, which takes you from that delivery of a slice of value, end to end or whatever, into, oh, I need to do at least something, no, or some progress in this big thing. So let's see how we can split it again and maybe not do that great of a job doing it. So granularity can have an impact for sure. But I think the awareness, no, and this is the same, using BDD, or this kind of thing. Like, how much do you know, or you're writing tests? How much does the test know about your actual solution? No, like how coupled is it to the specifics of what you're of what you're building, no? And that's the same at the definition level, no, or at the specification level. If you're too coupled, then you start creating those things. But there's another aspect, by the way, that we discussed at the beginning, which was the get it built quickly. You're maybe taking some shortcuts or whatever, which is an aspect that, even if you define at that value level, there's this thing between building the right thing, which is what you were kind of talking about, like what is it that we need to build, no, and building it right. And what you were kind of saying was like, you need to focus on building the right thing. Tell me what that is, and then with the knowledge that we have of the system and with everything, then we will tell you that what's the best way to build it, right? And then you're balancing that healthy tension and with the no, and talking about attitude and all that stuff, no, but there's still that aspect of time pressure, no, that may lead you to not always build it the right way. Yeah. And this is, I think, where also some of that comes from, because you don't do certain things that maybe you know that you need to do in order to get that delivered faster, and then never go back to. So somehow you need to keep track of that, no? And this is where technical starts. Oh, we need to refactor X. Oh, we need to introduce auto scaling. Oh, we need to like whatever technical aspect it is of the how you build it.
There is, as you were talking, I was thinking that we might have at least two different scenarios here, where these tension between like what is a business and what is a technical thing.
I'm making it a trend. It's coming back.
It's coming back. But for example,
it is.
The examples that you were both providing, they are the amount of, if I understood correctly, is the amount of technical work that we need to do within the scope of a business task, right? So, for example, as Mesh, you said, like maybe there is a business task that focusing on adding a feature, or like I'm able to accommodate another person or something like that. So there is a business task that they want to do with a focus from the user or the product and stuff. And in there is a discussion of how much technical work should be done in order to support that feature. How far do we go with the technical implementation? And then there's a bunch of trade-offs, and some of the trade-offs might be the time and money that you take to build that feature. Yeah. So this is one scenario, and I find this scenario actually a bit easier to resolve I would call it a false dichotomy, but I find it easier to resolve that conflict, if you like, because it's within a business concept. So, for example, the person that is like whoever is in charge of the business requirements or the backlog is asking us for something to be done that they already are convinced of the business value of getting that thing done. Now it's the negotiation of how you're going to implement that and the different ways we can get there and the different trade-offs that you're going to have in terms of time, money, effort, and so on and so forth. But I find it a bit easier because the premise, the feature that we are discussing, no one is questioning the value of that feature in that scenario. But there are scenarios where the development team is pushing to work on something that the business doesn't recognize the value. And that's a completely separate situation. So going back to your adding an extra room or be able to add a person, accommodate another person, assuming that you have a hotel or whatever. This is those metaphors, they fall apart very quickly, but I'll try to build on that one. It is when the development team all of a sudden says, like, I want to do something that is nothing related to guests directly. And I'll give you an example. We want to change the electrical system of the building, because if you change the wiring, we might save energy. Or we spend so much time fixing electrical problems because there's always a fuse or something that explodes somewhere that we don't have enough time to focus on other tasks. And all of a sudden now, this is a very different type of task. And if we make an association to development, this is when developers are asking to refactor something or to change the structure of something or to use a different technology to do something else. And those tasks, the business cannot see the value of them. But most often than not, developers can also express the value of them. And this is, for me, where the biggest problem is. And one of the issues, well, there are many issues that I see there. One, if someone wants to work on something, it's their responsibility to justify the value of working on something, because they are asking. So they are asking, hey, I want you to pay me to be working on something for a period of time. And you need to be able to explain the value for the person that is paying, that is assigning that task, the time for you to work on that. If you're not even able to, you yourself are not able to explain the value or convince of the value to someone, like, you probably don't have a case, or you need to improve in the way that you communicate. Right. So, and this is where I think that one of the issues is, of course, that someone that is also in charge of you can also flip that around, that if someone is in charge of the building, they should not only have a myopic view of, we want to have more guests in the building when they can barely have the lights on at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
The metaphor is standing up quite well, by the way. I just came up with it. Right. but yeah, I totally agree, and I think using that example, right? I want to change the lighting. The electrical circuitry in the building. Well, it's quite a normal question to ask. Why? Mm-hmm. Why do you want to change it, right? Because, well, it's posing a health and safety risk, and the lights.
What do you mean? What do you mean you didn't build it right the first time?
Yeah.
What do you? No, this is the other one. No? Like, what do you mean? But you just worked on that room. We just added that room.
Exactly.
And you
wired all those rooms
you
6 months ago.
So why
or
do you
18 months ago
now?
Yeah. Well, this is another part. Maybe the analogy flies in that side as well. Is that we also have some responsibility as developers and designers of solutions to make sure that we're not doing it on a whim, that we're doing it well, so that they last, so assuming that they have lasted, but they were designed for one purpose and the building has been repurposed or all that kind of thing. And every new feature in a way is repurposing that building, right? So but we do for, and Sandro, I get that was the point you were making, right? We as developers, we don't actually help ourselves, in the sense that there is an intangible aspect to software, to a lot of this technical work that we do, and we take it for granted that others see it, right? And that they see it from our point of view. They don't see it from our point of view. They see it from their point of view. So how do you express those things that you are trying to do in their language, in terms of investment risk, all those kind of things? This is a key skill that we should have, along with all the other skills we learn in terms of building software. But it's actually it's something that is not even taught that much. How do you articulate value? I mean, I came through the software development track from college, but how do you articulate value to people who are non-technical, so on, is a thing that we just learn on the side. We don't even learn it. We just stumble until we maybe get it right at some point when we are almost dying.
And there is like we fail sometimes in multiple aspects, because there is the articulation of value, because like you as a developer, like quite often you are trying to push something, you have good intentions, like we all, like whenever someone is proposing a task, a thing for the team to work on, or for they themselves to work on, with very exceptional cases like CV building. I don't want to go into the very exceptional case, because that are we all understand that are the CV building. I want to do this with this technology because I want to learn the whatever technology, and then I find another job somewhere else.
No, but that is very real as well. Like I've
is real.
seen many
Right.
of those cases.
So but we can generalize. So for example, like there will be people that have questionable intentions when they propose a task to work on. But I like to believe that those they tend to be the minority, right? The exceptional cases, or focus on an individual that either is very incompetent to do their job, and I mean, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean, like, they don't have the competence or the competency to actually propose good features to evolve the system, or they are ill-intentioned because they want to build their CV and leave. But if we agree that those would be the exceptional cases, like most people would have genuine interest in improving things. They want to do certain things because they judge important. And we normally, developers, we fail to express the business value of what we want to do in a way that the people that can actually make that decision understand. Because like they need to understand, it's not just to justify to their colleagues, which is already difficult. Even among the developers, they might have completely different ideas of what should be done to improve the system technically, right? Each developer has a completely different idea in what they would like to improve. But they also need to cross that bridge and be able to convince the people that have the authority to make the decision of how the time will be spent. But another problem that we have, and this is sort of related to the granularity mesh that you touched upon earlier, is quite often when those tasks are suggested, the developers don't apply the same rigor that we use for the user stories, for the business tasks. The business tasks I want a very well-defined user story. If it's not well defined, they're going to complain with the product owner. I want a very well-defined acceptance criteria, because otherwise, or how we're going to test it, all the examples, all that kind of rigor. But when they propose a refactoring, they don't go through the same levels. Like, okay, so this is the task. This is how I want to break. This is the value. This is how I want to break. This is roughly how long it's going to take. Those are the increments. That's how we're going to measure that result. They don't have any of that. They just say, I want to refactor this bit of code, and I will be done when I'm done. And that's not going to fly.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think it's
Oh,
a
no,
it's a
not
very,
gonna
very
fall
good
doesn't mean
point.
they're not gonna try it anyway. So,
Yeah, it's not going to
and
be
this is
accepted by anyone, right? That's what I
Yeah.
no,
mean.
but
So
and this is the other thing. Like I think also on the other side, uh, business has been the business has been burned quite a few times as well, with something like this, right? Where people say like, no, we really need to do this, and we're gonna do it fast or whatever. It's gonna take X amount of time, and then it's a never-ending refactoring, and that kind of uh, breaks the trust that you could have, or the willingness that someone could have, no, in order to say, okay, I don't fully understand this, but I do trust the people that I'm working with to make the right choices. So I'm going to. But if you do that once and then it becomes an issue, and then do it again, and then at some point it's just like, no, 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 forget about that.
yeah,
Just keep
this
keep rolling, no, and
exactly. No, trust is a very, very important point, and I think it's like, when you say to the business, we need to spend X amount of time, and you even provide like an idea, because this thing has X number of defects every time we release, but we're gonna do this thing, and the defects are going to reduce by 20%, and 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 this will save us this kind of money if we talk about it in effort, and interruption to business and all those kind of things. Okay, so the business goes, go ahead and do it, and you go ahead, and even if you say that you've done it, you spend that time doing it, and you say, yeah, I'm done. Okay, is it saving us that 20%? uh, the worst answer is no, the defect rates, or at least perceived to be the same. Well, why? And it often happens, right? Because our solutions are often more idealistic than we haven't applied kind of a good scientific method or so on, or we haven't articulated that to the business that, listen, this is a heuristic, or this is a not this is a hypothesis. We're going to experiment. We may get better, but we may not, right? No, no, we will get better, and then they disappointed, or even worse. So did we get better? You did that effort, and did we have less defects? I don't know. I mean, we were not measuring defects then, and we're not measuring defects now. There are defects, but I think they are less. Again, that's not that's not the right way to gain trust, right?
No, and there is an element, and this is not only about the topic that we are discussing, but this is like an advice for any kind of potential disagreements in how to move forward. Is at some point, if you feel that as a developer, as a technical person, that you are failing to express, well, you feel that your solution is not being accepted because, like, you want to do something and you are finding blocks to it. One way is to stop proposing that solution in the first place. It's like, do we even agree on the problem? For example, the person that we are discussing that. For example, do we even agree that we have too many bugs in the system? Do we even agree that this is a problem where we are spending too much time and this has been a big issue for us? Because a lot of developers will say like, okay, we want to do this refactoring thing because we are spending too much time struggling with the code, or it creates bugs or whatever else. Right, but as you said, Mesh, are we even measuring those things to start with? And does the other person even accept the premise that we are spending too much time in that area, or that we have too many bugs, and fixing those that time inefficiency, if you like, or reduce the number of bugs would be priority over something else? Because if you don't start there, we have zero chances to convince someone to do something that they don't want to do, or they have a preference to do something else, right? We need to, first of all, agree with the problem, right? So do we recognize this as an issue? If you are able to have that agreement, that alignment, all of a sudden, because this is another thing that we were back to the healthy tension from Jose. But like
It's coming
sometimes,
back.
yeah, sometimes we see that people feel that they are almost in opposite sides, And they feel this way because they are fighting over solutions. They are proposing different solutions. I want to do this. No, I want you to do that. But they don't agree on what needs to be done. What is the priorities they should take? Because if they start there, they don't, at that point, when they recognize the priorities of issues, they are on the same side, because now they are in a much better territory to discuss possible solutions to solve those issues. And this is a thing that is a skill, and I don't see a lot of developers willing to put the time and effort to achieve that.
You're talking about the skill, and I think that's also part of the thing, because you always mention the false dichotomy, right? And as I understand, that is you need to choose between one or the other. It's not necessarily that, right? Like you could be doing both.
This is exactly what I just said now, that like if you agree on the problem and prioritize on the problem, you end up removing the dichotomy, right?
Yeah, but it's also a matter not only of the priority, understanding the problem, but how you split the work, right? Like, which we've been discussing as well. Like, is it part of the same work, or is it something different? Yeah. And this is where you could, as part of adding the new feature, I think it was Jirai who was saying something in the chat on the point. If as part of adding the new feature, you need to do some refactoring to decouple to whatever, fix some other thing that comes up, you do it, and that is part of the same work. Now, to do that, requires a level of skill, requires to have the practices, and requires for you to be pragmatic enough to know when to stop. And this is something that it's not the skill, because maybe sometimes people do have the skill, but they don't know when to stop. Right? It's like you start pulling on the thread, and then everything unravels, no? And you end up without a sweater, no? Or it's too late already you've already invested too much into it, and so on. And this is another aspect, right? Like with great power comes great responsibility, kind of thing. Like if you are going to go down the route of focusing and doing both things and so on, you also need to know when it's good enough. When to stop there, and continue with the next feature. You also need to know where you want to go so that you don't lose sight of where you left. This is another thing. Like you start doing the refactoring, you stop, and then you work on something else, and then by the time that you come back, you already don't know where this thing was going. Or if someone else is continuing the work, they don't know where this was going. So all of those things I think are skills that need to be built in order to be able to work this way. It's not just, let's just put everything and we will do whatever is necessary to put the feature out, because it doesn't work like that. You still need to work within the constraints of the business, and within the needs that you need to supply, or that you need to fulfill.
There is one thing, Mesh, I don't know if you want to add something to this topic, but there is one thing that German mentioned on the chat that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, go for it.
By the way, you call him German, and is Herman.
Herman. Of course, there is a sign in there, and it's a Spanish name. German.
Exactly.
Sorry, Herman. So Herman, of course, it's a Spanish name. So Herman was saying that one thing that he thinks that it would be a good idea is that developers can go to the actual place where the systems are used and see with their own eyes how everything works in real life, and potentially with that experience, if I understood correctly, potentially we would be able to consolidate or agree more on what needs to be done moving forward. And I agree to some degree, Herman. I think that a lot of systems, and we even have a client that actually is I think that it would be beneficial for some of our people to see how the system is actually used. I think that the systems that are really focused on users, yes, having that kind of, what is it called? When they even like record how users interact with the system, or they speak to the users themselves. It's not the user experience. It's that
user research.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
part of
Yeah,
user
research
research.
lab, user experience research lab, or
Yeah.
yeah.
exactly. So speaking directly to the user, seeing them using the systems and stuff is a great thing to do, and I think that it gives the developers at least a different perspective, and I would agree uh, to to that level. The the bit that we need to take into consideration is that not every system has is focused on users. We have plenty of systems that don't have that users don't access directly, right? And this leads to another topic that I would like to bring to this conversation is how we capture requirements, because like a very traditional way of capturing requirements is through user stories. Is exactly what Herman was potentially referring to, is that user-centric view, right? So as a user, I would like to so that and so on and so forth. So everything revolves around the user. As I said before, not every system has a user. And sometimes when you try to uh, take a very technical task and create a user story with that format, it becomes very awkward, right? Because you are trying to bind the user behavior to something very technical to try to, to be to maybe target some inefficiencies that you have in the operation side, and it's quite distant from how the user writing that user stories becomes very quirky or
Yeah, it's not related to it. I have a like by the way, I totally agree with your point you're making. The initial point with Herman, I think what we are talking about, whether they are even if it's a user centric system, understanding the user is definitely a good thing and you should do it anyway, but it does not resolve this dichotomy, because actually what we are
no.
talking about here is the relationship between the business who has the kind of like, regardless of, as a developer, if you have a user centric view, great, right? But it also requires whoever else you're dealing with for them to have a developer centric view as well, right? So you need to have both of these kind of views. But and so I don't think just having knowledge of how the system is being used, so on, will help you resolve this dichotomy. I think it's more related to the roles that we have within the software development effort.
I have a so I
Sorry,
just
go
want to
on.
complement Mesh. The I have even a more fundamental view is that I believe that the focus of the delivery team, the value should always be to the business itself, where the users of the business are part of the value to the business. They're not like a
Yes.
separate thing, but they're not the only source of value, if you like.
And
So
they're
it's
not the
not the
direct
only.
source. They're not direct,
Exactly.
arguably, yeah, because they, through their interactions and better usage, you get the business value, but not directly from their usage. One can argue about that, but I totally agree with you there, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we if the delivery team it starts focusing, it stop. It's not that it stops. I don't want to say that we should stop focusing on the users, because that's not what I mean. But we should think about the business first. So user satisfaction is part of a successful business, but so
Yes.
is operational efficiency,
Yeah.
right? So is the ability to spin off other ideas, or to have that ability to try new things out, to experiment, to measure, and all of that, they are not necessarily related to a user. So the ability to experiment fast, or to measure the success of your business, or to improve operational efficiency, or to even like modernize your uh, part of your technology, because either some technologies are inefficient, or they are end of life, or you are struggling to recruit. So those are all different types of values for the business when you look at the long run. So when you
Mhm.
align our requirements, if you think that what is the value to the business and not only what is the value to the user, you opened up a far wider range of
Value.
valuable increments that you can add to your
But
system.
but this is what I mean by granularity as well. Because when you are talking about, as a user, I want to be able to do this, you're already too fine grained in terms of prioritizing according to business value. Because you are talking about the user, what user can do. You're not talking about business value. And when you prioritize at that level, you're no longer prioritizing this business value against this business value. You're prioritizing this feature against that feature, and that's where the problem happens. Because then at that point you can then start talking about features that are directly usable by the user, and features that are directly not usable by the user. And I think
I'll
a
do a
backlog.
bit of I'll do
Go
a
ahead.
little bit of devil's advocate here.
Mhm.
Aren't you referring more to the format than the actual thing? Because I can write a headline, and the
Yeah, yeah.
important part here is what conversation we're having around this, not so much what is written
No, but
on
the
the thing, right?
format. I talking about the format, but I'm talking about. I think Sandro was also talking about the word user story,
Yeah.
right? That already has, it applies a certain level of importance
But you can
on
have a
that.
what I'm trying to say is, yes, it is true, right? Yeah, I understand you're going to a level of granularity, right, when you're already focusing on the business, and then when you're comparing things, this is kind of like what you're suggesting, no? Correct me, eh? And when you're comparing things, you're comparing already features. You're no longer talking about the business value that you're adding. And I could challenge that, because again, it's a placeholder, right? Like the card is whatever you write there. You could write, a, right, or as a user, or a management system, whatever you want to write in that thing. And I think the important part, I mean, it is true that that can happen, yeah, if you're not making the business value part of the conversation. But you can have a conversation about business value even if the artifact that you're using is expressing things, from the point of view of the user, and so on,
But
right?
not
So
everything can be. I think that's what Sandro is saying. Not
Yeah.
everything can be expressed from the point of view of the user. And
Yeah.
yes, I know.
but
Like
but
if you've
but, but
got
I
a bunch of
understand, it's not like.
placeholders.
Yeah,
Sorry, if you're talking about a bunch of placeholders, a bunch of things in the backlog, then yes, the answer is, like, if you've got items in the backlog that
it's
present
actually probably
value,
backlog item, no, it's
backlog
like
items,
whatever.
then I have no problem. But if you say user story backlogs, in user stories in the backlog, so the item is a user story, then there is a problem, because you're kind of relegating all other perspectives, and kind of
Yeah.
elevating just the user perspective. And I think
Mm.
this is where the problem is, that when everything is defined from the, I think Sandro said it more eloquently than I would, but anything that is defined from a particular perspective, you are kind of relegating other perspectives. Even when you shoehorn those other perspectives in, they are by definition relegated. They somehow, they are kind of imposters in that user stories backlog.
They will make the other ones, the other tasks that are not user centric, look very awkward.
Second class citizen, no?
Yeah.
And they will be automatically, because they are awkwardly, they are expressing value where they shouldn't. So because, for example, because you are trying to assign value to the wrong actor in a way, right? So as I mentioned on the electric, rewiring the building, that feature, the value is purely from a business perspective, is operational efficiency or something like that. For the user's perspective, there's absolutely zero change, zero improvements. You can still try to force, right? So as a user, I want to switch on every single light switch at the same time across the entire building, and not have
And not have the fuse,
the
or
fuse
not have
explode.
the,
See what I'm saying? But then when you
the breakers
express,
go.
exactly, but
Yeah.
because you were forced to express through the user's perspective, this sounds so crazy, so unrelated, so unlikely, that would be that these would be deprioritized. But if we said, look, you know what, I would like to reduce our I don't know,
Spending on,
energy
yeah, or
consumption by X amount, changing how the type of wires that we use. That's a very different proposition. But now the value is being assigned against the right actor, that is the business itself. And as we focus on that, as I was saying, we widen up to the range of improvements or increments that we can add to the system, instead of just focusing one perspective.
I would say the right stakeholder and not the actor, because actor is
Yeah,
anyway. Just
yeah. No,
To use some UML.
I was struggling.
Exactly.
I was struggling a
Terminology.
little bit to find, but it's
No.
the stakeholder could be probably the best word. I was struggling a bit to
No
qualify
problem.
the business as an entity, you know.
So,
So
what can
I think we
someone
may
do?
have come to a quite a good insight. I don't know, maybe that like the a backlog should not be at the user stories level.
No, no. I don't think so. I think that
Let's say
the
the backlog
backlog,
should have items in it
workable items,
deliver
right?
Yeah.
deliver value to the business.
Yeah.
That I can agree with. Some of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
may be shaped in the form of user stories. Others may be shaped in different
Or
shapes.
why would you not have a backlog as a as an item, and that item can have a bunch of user stories to define a feature, or it can have a cross-functional or non-functional requirement from the point of view of an operator or a department, or all those things. So they are just items that are described in the way that they naturally need to be described.
Yeah,
But
Now
they
we're
all
going
have
into
this one thing,
now we're
which is
going
that they have
into
value.
another
They have
thing.
value well articulated, and how to measure it, and what the return would be on that as well, right?
yeah. So I wrote a blog post. Like I was just finding it in here. It was
I was leaving you
Shameless
early.
to
plug
plug.
time.
Yeah,
Shameless plug
is
time.
the plug.
Yeah.
That I call minimum valuable increment. I just paste the link into the YouTube chat. I don't know if YouTube will allow me to have links on the chat and stuff. But people watching, if you want, you can search for minimum valuable increment in the Codurance blog. You will find the finding a better way, and you don't need to use the format that I prescribed, but if you are able to express requirements, because this gives you a language, right? So the way that you are communicating requirements, if you express it from the business value perspective, or the value to the business, and you have a more structured way of applying that. A guy approached me on LinkedIn a few days ago. In fact, it was that conversation that led me to propose this topic for us to discuss. So he said that he found the blog post, and they started using this minimum valuable increment. And what he said was very actually, the name of the guy is Leonardo Tristão. That's the name. He's a Brazilian guy. And what he said was just using a different language, having a way to better express the business value of a technical task, and having most people using a similar kind of language to describe the value to the business, instead of just having that user-centric. By the way, this guy works for they have a platform engineering team. So imagine like a platform engineering team, how difficult it is for them to associate their tasks to the end user, right? So someone is highly technical, doing a lot of automation and so on. And he used the word in that the discussion that I was having with him, that was empowering to the team. They said, like, as soon as we as a platform engineering team, we found a better way to communicate the business value of the things that we had to do, we felt that we connected far more to the business. It was easier for us now to start getting our things done, because we could express better the benefit that they would get if we improved certain things in their platform. And I found it very, very cool. Like I didn't expect someone saying that the development teams, or in this case, platform engineers team, that would feel more empowered if they learned how to communicate the value to the business better, which is quite an interesting thing to hear.
Cool. We have 1 minute.
Yeah, 1 minute for the hour.
should
So
we
I'm
do
gonna
a
throw.
bit for wrap up?
I'm gonna throw something in now. This is not the no. No, but I do would like to add at the end something to lighten the mood. No, because again we've discussed of a few of the issues that something like this has. No, but what if you're trying to change that, and what if you're trying to make things better? Like, what can you do, or what? Let's say, what would we recommend? No, to someone who is trying to avoid that, no, or to, let's say, not fall into the same pits that we've described, maybe new pits, right? But yeah, so what would you recommend, let's say?
Want to go first, Mesh?
Yeah, I can. Happy to do it. So I think we touched on this thing, right? It's that you have to look at your audience, and you have to work with the people around you, right? So developers are not the only people that you need to convince, especially when you are working on things that are technical of in nature. It does not mean they are in any. I think it's important for you to believe that they are not diminished in value. They are extremely valuable. It's about how well you articulate that value to convince others. Business product owners and so on, they actually have an easier job because they are coming from features perspective and so on, where it's easier to attach value, attach revenues, all those things to certain features that are being developed. But that doesn't mean that other things, that other work that needs to be done and is a must, that doesn't have value. It's just that you have to work a bit harder to be able to describe its value. The other thing is that it's not just about hearsay, that you need to learn how to measure that value, right? So you need to be able to put systems in place where you are measuring these things. If there are lots of defects and you are trying to reduce defects, you should be measuring defects and trends on those defects, or how the system goes down, or the time it takes to get one feature through, because there is so much of complexity in the system that you are trying to get rid of. So all these things, all this work you do, when you measure it and you do something to make it better, and you measure it again, and that allows you to articulate. And then in some cases also, you would, a lot of this work that you do is hypothesis, right? And again, allowing the business to understand the idea of experimentation and hypothesis and so on, because we are not always clear on exactly what value you would bring, but these things are worth trying. But then again, taking everyone along with you, so that you're all in agreement on what's being done and how to measure it and what would be the success criteria and so on. Again, the treating things as experiments, proving hypotheses right or wrong, having the culture where when a hypothesis is proven right or wrong, it doesn't matter. You actually provided value because you experimented, and you got a result, and you're moving forward. So all those things matter. And I think the final thing that I would say is that be very careful when you are prioritizing. You should be prioritizing at the value level, right? And if you're not prioritizing at the value level, then you do open yourself up to this feature versus that other technical task. And this should never be the conversation. They I build this feature and maybe do that technical task later. That is too fine-grained a conversation to be having with people that are coming from two different perspectives. That's not the level at which they can agree on. They will make compromises and then so on, and I'll let you do this technical task, so you do my feature next, and so on. But that's not a healthy conversation. The conversation should always be at the value level. That's my 2 pence.
Cool. Jose, why don't you do your summary?
I no, I basically agree with what Mash was saying. I think another angle to that, yeah, would be to basically build the skills necessary in order to be able to do both things, no, and to face that fake dichotomy that we were talking about. So things like refactoring, like testing legacy code, or working with legacy code, and your own pragmatism and your own ability to make smaller steps in order to get to where you want to go, so that you can stop at any point. It would still work, it would still no, and then you can continue later on, and figuring out what kind of trade-offs, or what the size of the step that you need is. No, to again go back, I always get this phrase wrong, math, but the whole Kembeck thing of make the change easy and then make the easy change. No, so
Yep.
that idea of did I get it right?
Yep, you did.
The whole idea of
He now
how
calls
much.
it tidy first, by the way. He's writing a book on tidy first.
So this he's publishing the chapters, if I'm not mistaken. Like he's writing it in public.
Yeah.
That's good. I'll take a look later. But yeah, so that idea of how much is enough, right? Like why shouldn't I go beyond what I actually need to do this? No, and when I do it, can I make it so that I'm not shooting myself in the foot? No, and I can evolve from there later on if I need to, or make it easy for me to change whatever it is that I need to change in order to continue. And I think those are skills that require quite some time. You need to do katas. You need to do it with real code. You need to force yourself to making sure that the step sizes are small enough so that you can stop at certain point, and work as well on communicating a vision for a refactoring as well, or a technical strategy, if you will, of what the modernization effort is, because you may have to put that on hold because priorities, and that's part of why you're doing it like that. But if you come back, you definitely want to know where you were, and you definitely want to know where you want to go, so that people can continue moving forward with that. And again, all of those are skills and tools that you need to learn, because they don't teach you that stuff at the university, right? Like you need to pick it up as you go.
Cool. And before I give my final considerations, like if you enjoyed this chat, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, so it helps the video to be promoted to more people. So
click the notification.
Exactly. Click the notification so you're notified when we are live or we have new videos. But my final considerations is there are multiple things that brings business value, where users, for the systems that have users, for businesses that rely on users for their systems, it's the users is a big chunk of it, but it's not the other one. But it's not the only one. And if you just take one perspective of what brings business to the value to the business, we will be very limited in how we prioritize and what we actually do to evolve the system. And as I was saying, like, for example, adding more features can make the users happy, but it might not do anything for operational efficiency. Or focusing on operational efficiency might not do anything else for the users to like more the system. So, but both of them, they have business value. And so if we widen up a little bit more and discuss, as Masha was saying, like the main focus is to evolve the system in a way that provides values to the business, and not through a subsection of the streams of value, if you like. So that for me would be the main thing. And then of course that the different people with different perspectives, they need to be able to articulate how what they want to do will improve the business, what value the business will have if they are able to do what they want to do. And that is a much better conversation to have. So, okay, so this was our chat for today. I would like to thank everyone that was on the YouTube channel. Thanks for all your comments. It's great to have you there and laugh with you as well. So there are always some funny comments in there, and it's great to hear your opinions and so on. I hope to see you here next time. As I said, we are normally live every Tuesday at the same time. And yeah, I see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.